Awesome. It's great to see everyone joining in. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for our live workshop, Governance and Compliance on Amazon EKS with Nirmata, with our AWS and Nirmata teams. My name is Randy. I will be your moderator for today's session. I do have some housekeeping items I would like to share with you. This session is being recorded and will be sent out shortly after we conclude. Since this is a workshop, we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and we will get to them as soon as we can. And then we can also address any other questions during our Q&A session at the end. We would like to introduce you to our lovely speakers. We have Dallas with Nirmata and Patrick with AWS. Dallas, would you like to go ahead and give us an intro of yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Randy. Hi, everyone. My name is Dallas, and I work at Nirmata, and I'm based in Canada. Thank you.
Awesome. Patrick, on to you.
Doing? Hey, I'm Patrick. I'm with AWS. I've been with AWS for about 2.5 years now, almost three. Wow, crazy how time flies. But I'm excited. I'm based out of Miami, Florida, and definitely excited to talk about Nirmata as far as in how they can help us, put a harden on as far as like our EKS clusters, with policies because it can be very challenging at scale. So very happy to talk about that, and very happy to have you guys here.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. To get us started off, we do have a couple poll questions to set the stage. I will go ahead and launch them, and then we'll give everybody about a minute or two to answer. So I just launched them and go ahead and find time to answer. And like I said, we'll give you a couple minutes. The first one being, what is your job role? And the second question is, what are the biggest challenges you currently face? And that you can check multiple of the answers. Awesome. I see everybody chiming in. This is great.
This is good. All right.
Love the participation.
Yes. As expected, a lot of platform DevOps cloud engineers here. Awesome.
Give everyone another minute, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll. Very excited about this talk. A lot of neck and neck with the second question about challenges as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a very clear top two. Yeah. And rightfully so. Rightfully so.
You got about another 20 seconds, and then we'll close the poll. This is awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results with you all. As you can tell, the job role function is platform DevOps or cloud engineers. So we're happy to have you. That's at 78%, so a vast majority. And then with the what are the biggest challenges you currently face, it looks like our clear top two are managing and scaling policies across environments and managing security in Kubernetes. So that is very interesting, and we're excited to kind of bring this workshop to you and address these concerns and then how we can help support. So that being said, Dallas, I will hand it off to you to kind of kick us off with the workshop.
Thank you, Randy. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to quickly start. Perfect. I hope everyone can see my screen. Okay, cool. So just gonna change bunch of items in here. Perfect. Okay, so before we dive deeper into today's workshop, this is what the agenda looks like, where we'll start
Oh,
with,
Dolis, I think you're sharing your other screen.
oh, okay.
I think yeah, it's showing your desktop.
What about now?
Yeah, perfect. There we
Perfect.
go.
Okay, sounds good. Funny. Okay, so before we dive deeper into today's workshop, this is a quick agenda in terms of what we're going to talk today. So we'll start with why, what's, and how of policy management and what this entire buzz is about and what does security means in Kubernetes clusters. And from there, we'll start with hands-on lab where we can onboard a cluster in Nirmata and we'll just walk you through how do you resolve all those complicated workflows and use cases and problem statements, which we'll talk about. Later, we can take some questions, but during the workshop, if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comment section and we'll take it whenever we can. And let's dive deeper into that. So now we have introduced this, so I'm going to skip this one. And let's talk about why we need policy. So we know that by default, Kubernetes is not very much secure. And the nature of Kubernetes is so dynamic that it's difficult to actually secure the cluster by default. And this is a latest CNCF report that was published 2 years back, which says that the major reason that there are security incidents that are happening nowadays is because of the misconfigurations. And you would see this in news, on LinkedIn, on social media platform here and there all the time, that there is some security incident, something happened, and all that narrows down to a misconfigurations. What does misconfiguration would look like? Everybody think about, oh, misconfigurations is probably running your pod as non-root or probably this, but it can be anything as simple as a label, anything as simple as having different security context or any different kind of misconfigurations that looks like in your environment. What we are also seeing, the reason for this misconfiguration is the nature and the environment of the Kubernetes cluster is changing by time. I remember 5-6 years back when Kubernetes was introduced, it was entirely responsibility of a platform engineer or DevOps engineer to own the cluster. But now we are seeing the model is changing where a developer have access to their namespace. So we are onboarding developers to the cluster. Platform team are responsible to manage all of that. So it falls under the responsibility of platform team to manage the life cycle. And security team also have access or probably scan the cluster to see what misconfigurations or what security threats are having. So you would see an application is kind of touched by all these different teams where a developer might just be looking for an image and environmental variables. An operation guy might be more concerned about labels or nodes and taints and tolerance and everything for scheduling. A security guy would be more focused on what goes in security context. How is the pod running? Is it running as root? What privilege it has? So because there is so much of friction in an application, there is a wide reason or there is a whole lot of possibility that there can be a misconfiguration in your application, and that may lead to a security threat. We talk about it all the time. You would see this in like webinars, you would see that in events and stuff, but we still don't know what we are talking about, right? How does one misconfiguration can cause such a big issue? And how are we claiming that, oh, if you have one misconfigurations, your entire cluster would be compromised and stuff? So I've made like a very quick video of how is that possible. So here what I'm doing is I'm creating like a bad pod. When I say bad pod, it's like a pod which has everything. It has the most privilege. It is running as a root. It has all the things that you're not supposed to do. And that's why it's a bad pod. So I'm creating a bad pod and I don't need access to the cluster. I'm just creating it in a namespace. So it can be like any developer today can take this bad pod from the internet or probably have some different settings and they don't even know this pod is misconfigured and they're just deploying it. And once you deploy this pod, which has all sort of misconfigurations, you'll see the pod is running in here. And the only thing I need to do is exec into this pod. And the moment I exec into this pod, I'll see access to the host. So because of the pod's nature and all sort of misconfigurations I have added in this pod, you could see that deploying just a pod, you don't need an application, you don't need all sort of privilege and access and stuff. You just need a pod with the misconfigurations to deploy, and you can exec into the pod and you'll see all the access to the host and stuff. So if I deploy this today in any of the Kubernetes cluster, I can get access to your cluster. I can get access to all of these files, this certs and whatnot. And even I can bring down the cluster if I intend to. But this is what we are talking about when we say misconfigurations. And that is where, when we say that even a single misconfiguration can lead to a security threat, this is exactly what we are talking about. So let's talk about a little bit about, okay. So let's talk about a little bit about what can and how can policies help, and why do we need policies? So we know that misconfigurations can be a major reason, and that's why you require a policy which can help you to just block such kind of misconfigured applications and pods. And what policies will do it is, once you have these policies in your cluster, you can make sure that these kind of applications which doesn't have the configurations right can be blocked. And you want to do it sooner before than later, right? Because once these applications are deployed and your misconfigurations are running on the cluster, it doesn't make sense to actually block them because they're already there in the deployment. Think about it. If you have like an application running in production and you have so many users in there, and if there is a pod which is misconfigured, deployed in the production, you cannot do about it because it's already deployed. So the best thing is that you deploy policy, you enforce it, and make sure that you don't do it or fix it post deployment. Rather, you fixed it before it's getting deployed. So this is like a small picture in here, which I'm trying to explain is how you can see like a difference in your Kubernetes cluster where everything is scattered and you feel like, I don't know what's happening to this. Another reason we are seeing more and more where the platform engineer is evolving is self-service model. And that's been very famous. What is the difference between a DevOps and platform engineer? The only difference is that a platform engineer does certain kind of approach and certain kind of workflow to enable developers and have the self-service model for their application team. How do you do a self-service model without policies? How do you make sure that you provide the access to the developers and let them deploy their application? And if you don't have anything, proper guardrails to see what exactly they're deploying or what they're not supposed to deploy, we're blocking it. How do you do the self-service model? You cannot just give the namespace to a developer, because as a platform engineer, you're responsible for the cluster, you're responsible for the life cycle of the cluster. But another thought is that you also want to enable self-service. So it's kind of, when I think about it, and somebody tells me that we have to do self-service, when I think about it, it's very conflicting because I own the cluster, but I also want to do self-service where I want to give namespace access or other access to developers. They can do their task without any friction. How do I do that? The reason that I can do that very efficiently with me having confidence that, okay, my cluster is not going to go down, I'm not going to have any issues, but I still can enable those self-service model is using policies. So I can deploy some 5-10 policy saying that you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. Now take the environment, enjoy. And that gives me like peace of mind to just enable that self-service model. So that's where we see a lot more about the buzz about policies, policy as a code, and why policies are necessary in today's world. Now, again, how video, I'm a very big fan of how video because I know we all are like developers and platform engineers, and we are a fan of slides, but we always love demos. So I have just created like a quick video, which is kind of an extension of the old video where I was deploying this pod and I was executing this pod and I got all the access I need. And I want to show you how does that look different when you deploy policy? What does that exact situation translate into when the policies are deployed? So this was, I have access. I have already like discussed this where you have all the access. You can get into your host, probably bring down your cluster if you intend to, all of that. And now what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'm showing a little more in terms of I have all the access and I'm there. Now I'm exiting into the host. That means I'm in my terminal. I'm deleting the bad pod. I'm clearing everything. Now the same situation when you deploy policies. So I have my Kubernetes running in here and I've already deployed Kubernetes in the cluster. I have some policies and I'm going to deploy these policies in here. So if you look at it, I'll deploy just one policy, I think. Perfect. So I'm just deploying one. I don't even need like 15 policies. I've deployed one policy, it's enforced, it's true, it's ready. Now I deploy the same bad pod again, day one situation. And you see that it kind of blocks that pod. So it tells you that you cannot deploy this pod. And it doesn't even tell you why, but it also tells you like what exactly it's missing. So it tells you that the container must drop all capability. I do not like it. This is misconfigured pod and this is blocked. So this gives me, as a platform engineer, a lot of confidence to provide that self-service model, to sleep in peace saying that my cluster is secure and no bad pods are deployed, and I'm just happy about it. So yeah, that's that. Now, we don't know that why we need policies and what can policy do and how they can change your life. Now, this is a little bit about how we are doing it. So today, as I said, we have Kyverno deployed. And I would say this one thing, right? Even if you have Kyverno deployed, even if you're using any other policy manager solutions out there, I would just say one thing is, if you have your workloads running in production, you should deploy at least pod security policies. Either you're using any admission controller, you write one, you create one, use the default one, use Kyverno, use anything else. But it is very much must that you deploy pod security policies at the least if you're deploying production, or you're just waiting for some threat to happen and then react, right? So that's why one recommendation to go. Here we'll be talking about Kyverno, which is like an admission controller. And if you look at the admission controller, it sits here in your mutating and validation webhook part of your Kubernetes cluster. So a little bit about the workflow. Whenever you deploy anything, or whenever you talk to your API server, the first thing that happens is authentication and authorization. So you might have seen that whenever you do kubectl, you get an error saying that you're not supposed to access that namespace, or you don't have access to that pod. Guess what? It's coming from the stage. So that is the stage which authenticates and authorizes your API request. And that's when the mutation and validation webhook gets invoked. So this is happening before the pod YAML goes to the etcd and gets stored. So your application YAML is not even getting stored in the database. Before that, you're actually using the webhook configurations. And that is where Kyverno sits in, where you can deploy the policies, and the policies are coming in the picture at this part, where it is validating the pod YAML, or it is mutating the pod YAML, and then it gets stored to your database. So that's a little bit of workflow of Kyverno, or for that matter, any admission controller you'd be using. And if you're wondering, where does it sit in the cluster, and what does the architecture look like, and how did it do it? Is it magic? No, it's at this phase of your API server's workflow, where it gets invoked after the authentication happens, but before it gets stored to your database. And Kyverno is being trusted by a lot of leading enterprise. We are in the community for 3.5 years. We are in incubated projects, and we are most popular in the policy engine by the number of stars in Git. And the community is wide. If you have any questions, we have Slack channel in Kubernetes and CNCF, so you can reach out to us if you have any questions on Kyverno. Now let's dive a little more into what is a policy and what does the policy structure would look like. So this is what a policy structure would look like, where a policy will have one or more than one rule. So if you look in here, one policy has one rule, but you can have more than one rule in a policy. And every rule has a match and an exclude section. What does that mean is you can go in your cluster as granular as you want. So you can have a use case saying that I want to match to a particular name of the pod sitting in a particular namespace. You can go as deep as you want, or you can use the same logic in the exclude section, or you can use both if you have like very weird use case where you want to match a policy to this, where you want to exclude a policy for a certain resource. So in a higher higher view, match and exclude kind of helps you to define the scope of the policy. When you're deploying a policy, what does the scope of the policy should look like, and what exactly it should deploy on? And then what the policy is doing. Is it mutating certain thing? It's verifying? Is it validating? Or it's generating new resources based on the trigger, is where this logical block comes from. Every policy that you see will have the same syntax. By the way, the policies are in YAML. So anytime if you just know Kubernetes and if you know a little bit of about applications, you can write your first policy. It's the learning graph of Kyverno is very, very, very small. So you don't have to go and learn like a language or anything else. In fact, I'm not really a fan of a language, and I don't know a lot more developer side of things. And for me to write a policy, I started doing it from day one. So it's really simple, doesn't have a learning curve. These are some of the use cases on a top use cases that you can use. Again, you can have your own custom use cases, but these are some of the SecOps, DevOps, FinOps use cases where you can have workload security, you can do granular RBAC, you can do event-based automation if you're into DevOps. For FinOps, you can do cost optimization, quota management, auto scalers, etc., etc. Perfect. So before we dive deeper into our hands-on lab, these are some of the sections for Nirmata. So we talked about policies, we talked about Kyverno, we talked about what is Kyverno, what is admission controller, all those use cases. Now, how does Nirmata help? So what Nirmata do is, it's sitting on the top of Kyverno, which has a layer on top of Kyverno, and it enables these controls on your cluster, in your cloud, and in your pipeline. So think about it. If you have Kyverno for one cluster or two clusters, that's fine. But think about, you have 50 clusters and you have 40 pipelines and you have 7 cloud environments. How are you going to manage all of that when you have such a huge scale where you have hundreds of clusters or hundreds of accounts you're trying to scan and secure? You want something that is able to manage and able to entirely show you the violations in a single pane of glass. So what Nirmata does is it kind of enforce these policies on your cluster, on your pipeline, on your cloud. And from there, you can see everything in the platform. Then you can have other integrations, like you have seen some of the integration in here. And it does a lot more than just providing violations, because you don't want to just see the violations and do nothing about it. The reason you want to deploy policies is you want to fix them or get to a point where you don't have a lot of these violations. And that's where Nirmata helps you. Kyverno is good if you want to like block anything and stuff. But if you are in an enterprise and you have hundreds of clusters and you want to manage that, managing that at scale becomes really challenging. And that's where Nirmata steps in and helps. So this is some of the capabilities and integrations I have in here. And this is what the workflow looks like, where you have the Nirmata Control Hub, which we'll be seeing today. And then you can log in the Nirmata Control Hub. And what it does is it takes the control from, or the violations from your pipeline, cluster, cloud, and it kinds of like everything to your platform. So you don't have to, like, if I have 40 pipelines, I'll have to click 40 times to see my violations. If I have my 20 clusters, I have to go to every 20 clusters and see the violations. That's too much. I cannot scale. So that's where Nirmata helps, where it kind of brings all of that and gives you recommendations, give you all those workflows that you would need to remediate or fix those violations and come to a safe point. Thank you very much. So before we dive into the hands-on, Patrick, do you want to take it ahead?
We do have a question. If I'm going to go ahead and read this for you. When you were talking about Kyverno, someone chimed in and said, how is this different from OPA Gatekeeper? And can we write tests for Kyverno policies?
Yeah. So how is it different than OPA Gatekeeper? It is not different. OPA is also an admission controller, and so is Kyverno. I would say evaluate both and see which one you like. It's not anything different, but we do have some capabilities I would advocate for, is we do have mutate and generate capabilities. And writing policies, as I say, is simple. As I said, I'm not a Rego fan. I don't have a developer mindset. So I have no bandwidth to learn a language, to be very honest. But that's the only difference I would say. And apart from that, there was one thing that we saw a lot in community was Kyverno was just for Kubernetes in the start, which was like a Kubernetes baby we created, where it has a lot of integration. It was native to Kubernetes, but we have extended that as well. So you can scan your JSON files in Kubernetes just like OPA. So I would say we are saying what OPA is doing. It's an admission controller, some capabilities plus minus, but I would let the audience decide and evaluate on that. And the second question, which I missed, can you test the policies? Yeah, we do have a tool called Chainsaw, and I'll walk you through that. Some of that you can also do it in Nirmata, but we do have a tool called Chainsaw, which you can use to test your policies. So you can write your test cases, just like when you're coding something as a developer, you have unit test and you do the unit testing and then you push that in production. You do not just write a code and put it in production, right? So the same concept, you're using all the software engineering methodology when you're creating a policy, where you create a policy, you test it using Chainsaw, and then push it in your production. I hope I was able to answer the question.
That was awesome. Thank you, Dallas.
Please.
That was great. That was great, Dallas. I love it. I love it. Great. So you did a wonderful job explaining as far as the pain points that a lot of platform engineers as well as developers face when trying to think of speed and development and trying to get products out as soon as possible. At the at the helm of ensuring that you're following best security practices, which is very easy to deploy a bad pod like you mentioned, Dallas. So it's very important and paramount that we have those guardrails up. And I think Nirmata does a fantastic job at doing that. So again, good morning or afternoon, everyone. So what I want to go ahead and do is talk about, AWS and the shared responsibility model as far as, it's all a one team and one together thing where, we do have to understand the delegations of, when it comes to at least EKS. And this is familiar with a lot of other tools that we have and products that we have and services. So at AWS, we design our cloud services with a clear delineation of security responsibilities. So it's a concept of us being responsible for security of the cloud, and our customers are responsible for the security within that cloud. So for EKS, for AWS, Amazon EKS specifically, here's the breakdown pretty much. So on our side, we manage and secure the entire Kubernetes control plane. And this is going to include the control plane nodes, the etcd database, and all the underlying infrastructure that's necessary to deliver a reliable and secure EKS service. So we're going to ensure that it's highly available, obviously, across multiple different availability zones, and that's going to be fully patched and continuously monitored. Now, as far as our EKS users, now you're going to be responsible for configuring and securing those other components like the IAM roles and the permissions of your cluster, the worker nodes, and the pod security policies and network security policies, and overall compliance monitoring and that reporting for your applications within that EKS cluster, right? And we've designed multiple ways of managing flexibility. So if you're more of a, you want to optimize like our EKS AMIs, you can, initiate those updates yourself. But if you want to go, hands off, more hands off. So we do have something called Fargate. Now we pretty much take on even more by managing that entire node infrastructure. So there's, obviously different boundaries that we want to make sure, and we don't want to just point the finger, as far as I always think of the that Spider-Man meme where like they're just pointing at one another, and it's like at the end of the day, it's security concern is everyone's interest, right, or concern, right? So we all want to know where we are responsible for when it comes to securing our production, environment. So enough with that. I'm going to go ahead and now share my screen here. Let me make sure I have the capability here, and I do. Okay, so let me just share that. All right, fantastic. So I'm going to also post in the chat a link here. Let me just make sure I have the right section up here. Maybe 2 more seconds. So first thing I'm posting is the workshop link. So this is what we're going to be following as far as the workshop. So we want to make sure that you guys have a hands-on experience and not having to immediately start affecting policies within your production grade cluster. So we're going to be providing you AWS accounts that you can actually walk through Dallas's workshop that she's going to present. So that's the first thing. So that's the link that we're going to be following. And the more important thing is access to the AWS accounts, right? So this is the link for your temporary AWS account. So if you already have or you're logged into your account, please make sure you sign out and just click in here. And all you're going to need is access to the email that you're going to select to log in. And it's going to look a little bit something like this here. Once you click and verify, so it should send you like a one-time password. For me, I'm already pretty much like at that point to sign in and register. So all I need to do is just click, make sure you agree to the terms and conditions, and this will be available once you click join event. And you'll pretty much see as far as this screen here. So I'm going to wait a couple of seconds for you all to go and sign in. Just make sure you guys are able to access this. It should hopefully get in your inbox. If you don't see it within a couple of minutes, definitely check your spam folder. Sometimes it gets slotted in there. So just be sure to look in there if you don't see it after a while. But once you go ahead and verify everything and you log in, you're going to see this screen. And this screen is pretty much how you're going to access the VS Code server that we have pre-installed for you. And we also have a running cluster as well. So the first thing that we need to do here is let's actually click copy as far as our IDE password. And then let's just click on this link here. And we're just going to be presented with that VS Code password. So this is fronted by CloudFront. So, this will be yours. You'll be able to access it as long as you have your password. So everyone will have their own VS Code server that registers and signs in. And we ask you all to sign in. We have, plenty of accounts for you to go ahead and use this. And because Nirmata is doing such a wonderful job, typically these workshops last 24 hours. But I want to extend it for you all so you can really immerse yourself into this, this workshop and environment. So I'm going to give you guys an additional 48 hours. So you have a total of 72 hours. So you got 3 days to go ahead and experiment with this. These are temporary accounts. So after that 72-hour period, any of the content and as far as your workload you have in there is going to be lost. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind as far as with all of the experimentation that you're doing. So the workshop link is in, yeah, I just sent, let me just send it to, I think I sent it to only the panelists. Let me actually do that. Thank you, Poojan, for mentioning that. Here you go. So that's the workshop link, and this is the link to access the AWS account. So just click on that link and you should be good to go there. And as you see, once you have access to there, let me move this a little bit out the way. You'll be accessing your environment here. Let me probably just zoom in, make sure you can see this a little bit better. Might be a little bit too big, but yeah, so here we are. So now that we're signed in, we can go and navigate to the prerequisites section here in the nirmata.awsworkshop.io section. And we just want to go ahead and click add an AWS event since we are, doing this together. And this is just still the same steps as I mentioned. So if you're falling a little bit behind, this will pretty much walk you through accessing your AWS account. So let's move on. So what we also need to do now is let's navigate to think. Actually, let's do an incognito page. All right, cool. All right, wonderful. So you also need to register for a Nirmata account, which is free. They actually given you guys a 15-day trial account. So you have almost 2 weeks to go and experiment with this within the workshop. And you can, add your own cluster as well, as far as that you want to experiment with outside of the, the environment that we're using. So you have plenty of time to go ahead and get your hands, as far as dirty with, experimenting with certain policies that you want to, investigate, right? So just sign up. It takes less than a minute to go ahead and register. So you want to make sure you have that Nirmata account set up because we're going to definitely need that for the following sections. So the following part here is the installing the NCTL. So this is going to be Nirmata's command line interface. So it's a binary that you can install. So all we need to do is literally just copy this here, and I'll go back to the VS Code server, and we can just, paste that. We just need to go ahead and allow paste there, and we can just click enter. All right, perfect. And now NCTL has been downloaded. So let's just go ahead and do the complete installation. So let's unzip it and move it to our bin folder. So then that's going to be done with this command here. All right, perfect, perfect. So now we have NCTL installed as that prerequisite. And now we can go ahead and have fun as far as actually getting into in our experimenting. So you can actually verify you have the binary properly installed by entering the NCTL version command. And as you see here, we have version 4.7.0, and that looks good. So with that being said, I think we are good to go as far as with that. So there's one step here as far as actually getting the NCTL login. So right now we're not officially logged in to our Nirmata account. So to do that, we need to go to Nirmata. So let me actually just do that here. Nirmata.io. Let me just log in. Okay. It loads up for me. Should load up in a couple of seconds. I think it's because I'm in incognito. I'll just try to use my other tab here, which is also incognito. Just log in. Maybe installed in another tab. I think it's my log me in for some reason, but it's all right. So I'm going to just use another tab here on the other on my other screen here, and I'll just pull it over.
Trying to check as well. I think that's I'm in probably.
You're in. Okay, if you're in, I'll just pass it on to you. I'm not sure why it's not letting me log in on my side, but I think it might just be locally to me, more than likely. Oh, actually got in finally. I'll just move this page over. Okay, so perfect. So I'm in. So now that I'm in, finally, we can go ahead and go down to settings, and we can go to, I believe it's profile. And once we go to profile, there's going to be this copy button here. And all we need to do is just copy that and just go back to our environment. And I believe we just can paste this right in. Perfect. So now it's been updated. So now we're logged in into our NCTL profile and our account. So that should have hopefully given you enough time to sign in and register there. So at this point, we have NCTL installed. We've been able to log into the AWS account that you have access to, as well as if you want to actually access the console, you can actually click here, and this will upload, this will open the link to your temporary AWS account, and you can pretty much navigate through here and experiment. So please feel free to experiment. Just be mindful that this is an actual AWS account and we are incurring costs on this, but we do want to make sure that you guys are empowered to go ahead and test out these policies and other AWS services. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it to Dallas so she can go ahead and as far as take it from here. So let me stop sharing and it's all yours.
Thank you, Patrick. Perfect. I'm going to share probably desktop too. Am I sharing the right desktop? Do you see Nirmata?
You see Nirmata now. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I think once you log in and get your free trial, you'll see this landing page. You might not see any cluster. I have a bunch of them. I was testing the workflows, but yeah, this is what the view would look like. Bunch of things I want to just highlight is the trial account is for 15 days. So you can test it at your own space. And there is a button called as support. So in terms of if you are facing any issues, if you want to reach out, if you want any help, click on support and you can directly chat or add your email in there and we can reach out to you. So there's something that you can, it's handy, something that you can play around with. And there is a docs section in here, which will help you to just navigate through if you missed NCTL or if you're like wondering what all NCTL provides or what all Nirmata provides. So you can go in here and you can just dive in the documentation side. Perfect. So let's go back to our workshop, and we have the first flow that is a cluster onboarding. So you can go and you click on add clusters, and from the UI you would see like bunch of commands that you can use, or you can just copy these Helm commands and just deploy it on a cluster, and you'll see Nirmata automatically installed. There are a bunch of ways of doing the same thing. There is not like one way to onboard the cluster. There are different ways to onboard cluster. You can also use NCTL, but today I'm going to just use the Helm one because I like Helm installation. It's my preference that I love doing Helm installation, but you can use NCTL as well, which you'll be seeing in the UI. So I'm going to deploy this to Helm command, and I'm going to just tour this. I'm going to even probably just, yeah, for, you know, a little good. Okay, sounds good. So once I do that, then I'm going to deploy my Kyverno from using this Helm command. And let's see if it goes through. Meanwhile, there's just, okay, perfect. So this has got deployed and it was the right version, sounds all good. Then you use the second command and you deploy the operator. Perfect. So your operator kind of got deployed. Sounds good. And now you use the third command, which is the API token. So you have done a bunch of things. You have deployed Kyverno, you deployed all the operator stuff. Now you deploy a kube controller, which is responsible to connect this cluster back to Nirmata. So I'm going to do the export part. So copy this to URL and just put it in here. Do a clear command where my spelling is all messed up, but and then I have a token. Okay. And I'm going to do the installation here. So I'm going to just customize my command by adding a token and stuff, but you can also do like environmental variables and add a token. So basically what I'm doing is, as Patrick said, you come in here, you go to settings, you go to profile, copy the token from here and just put it in the command, which is over here. So I'm going to just do it in my notepad in here pretty quickly. Perfect. I'm going to copy this command, go back to my bash, do a clear and paste it. And let's see how that works. Perfect. So it was deployed. Now I'm going to do kubectl get namespace and see what all got deployed. So I see 3 namespaces got deployed. It was Kyverno where Kyverno is running. Then there is Nirmata system where the operator is running. And then there is Nirmata. I'm going to just look at the logs and stuff or check if everything is good. Perfect. So there's everything is running. Now you go back to Nirmata and go to your cluster and you would see an EKS workshop already created. So you don't have, and the reason I love this is I'm not a big fan of clicking and doing 15 things. Rather, you give me a Helm command, I'll deploy it, I want everything done. So that's what my preference is. But if you want to just go along with this, where you do like add a compliance standard, do add cluster, and then use either NCTL or use Helm. And then I have run the commands and wait for Nirmata to just take all the cluster sync in there. That's good enough as well. But this is a preferred way where you just deploy these Helm commands and you'll see the EKS workshop already in. Now, the cluster is onboarded in Nirmata, and this is how it should see where your Kyverno engine is healthy or everything is up running. We have still not deployed the policies. In the Helm command, you can use policies and you can deploy that. So if you see in here where in the Helm command, we do have policy set, but I've deliberately not added policies. You can add policies in here, but the reason I've not done is we want to see what policy set is and what Nirmata's capability is to help you deploy these policies. So I'm going to just take a minute. I'm looking at the chats and okay, I think everything is cool. So once the cluster is onboarded, now let's deploy the policies and see what does the policy report looks like. Now to deploy the policy set, let's create a policy set in Nirmata. So you go in here and go to policy set and click on add policy set. And you'll see a bunch of options in here. You can use the one that is custom or you can have the one that are defaults. I would prefer custom so that I go through the workflow. So you click in here, click Git, which is the preferred model nowadays. GitOps is very much popular. So you want to do everything using Git. Give it a name saying test demo. Add in your setting in here. If you don't want to add anything, keep it default and just add the repository branch and path. All the details have been here already. So you can use this repository, you can use this branch, and you can use this. I do have some policies in here which are in audit mode. So nothing is going to get enforced or nothing is going to be like not working for your cluster. And just click on OK and you'll have a policy set automatically created in Nirmata. So I'm going to go back and I do have a policy set already created. Like I have a test policy set. And if you look at the settings, once you create a policy set, you can go back and you can change them. So once you deploy and you have like a typo or you want to just check what's happening, You can click in here and you see that this is a policy set I deployed probably last week. And I have the same repository, same branch, everything same. And it also tells me what is committed and stuff. So what Nirmata does is, it's like, think of it like GitOps model, where anything you have in Git, and this is what you want to do, right? These are the best practices where you have like number of policies. If you have like 30, 40 policies, you want to put everything in Git, let Nirmata add a policy set in Nirmata, and let Nirmata fetch every policies from the Git and deploy it in your cluster. You'll see what is committed automatically. There'll be rollback and stuff. Once you have these policies deployed, policy sets have deployed, sorry, go to add cluster and add your EKS workshop cluster. What does that do is, it's going to add these policies to your cluster, and you will see the policies will be deployed to this cluster. So I'm going to click on add, and it is saying that it deployed in my last cluster. It also tells me that this policy has an old commit, so probably you have to sync it and stuff, which helps me to manage the life cycle. And I have everything in a single place. As I was saying, if you have 20, 30 clusters, there is no way you can manage all of that at a huge scale. So you come in here, you see what the cluster looks like, what your policies are. You'll see they are deploying. You click in here, it will tell you which ones are ready, which one are not. If you see that you want to like sync it, you can click on the sync content and it's going to sync it for you. One more reason that you want to go with the policy set and let Kyverno operator do its job is, what Nirmata does is that it provides tamper protection on top of these policies. What does that mean is, as we know that, as I was showing the bad pod and stuff, right? Think about, there is your cluster get compromised. And the first thing that somebody who is getting access or intent to do some security threat on a cluster, the first thing they would do is bring out Kyverno and delete the policies. So what Nirmata will do is, it will not let anyone delete the policies using kubectl. If you want to remove the policies, you go back to the Git, you delete the policies from there, and then do a sync. So that way you are secure that anybody who has kubectl access or anybody who has like privileged access, they cannot touch Kyverno, neither they can delete the policies. So that's what the tamper detection is. Now, once these policies are deployed, I'm going to just look back in here and I'm going to do cpol, which is the policy command. And I see that these policies are deployed at 66 seconds. So all of that are ready. All of that is working. Perfect. Now, what I'll also do is I'll deploy some sample pods just to make sure that I'm seeing some violation. So over here, if you look at these policies, or probably I'll just go in here, I go in here, I go in my Nirmata policy, and this is the one that we deployed. If you look at the policy, let's talk through one policy. And if you look at this policy, you would see that, as I said, this policy would have a match condition, and then it would have a validate block. This match condition is only in the Nginx and demo namespace. So I'm not deploying the policy for my entire cluster, because that's not a best practice where you get in the policy and just blow out your cluster. You want to just scope it well. So that's why I have two namespaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create those namespace. Create namespace, what was that? Nginx. And then there was demo. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my insecure workloads, or you can just run deployments, like run any deployments, but I do have some app here, and you can access this GitHub repo. You can access it's public. So vi app.yaml. Let's see, I have this applications here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this in my demo namespace. And I'm going to apply this in my Nginx namespace just to get some violations and see how the violations look like. Now I'll go back in here, I'll go to my policy reports, and I'll look at my namespace, and I'll see the namespace coming up for demo and Nginx. Again, we don't want to have these policies deployed in your cluster and you have like thousands of violations and you just don't know what to do about it, and you're suddenly getting a fatigue of these violations. Rather, we want to scope it for your application namespace, which really matter, and not your kube system or those namespaces which really do not matter, right? So I go in my demo namespace, and you can see a bunch of things in here. So you can see all the violations. You can look at resources and you'll see like I have some applications, and these are like deployments, what is failing, what is passing. Click more further, dig down more, and you'll get all the details in terms of what is failing, why it is failing and stuff. Now, And just to add, the filters are like automatically for fail, because we believe that you are in Nirmata to see what's failing, but you can remove and you'll see what is passing and not. Now, what you can do is click on view remediation, and that's where the real value of what Nirmata do on top of Kyverno is, and how Nirmata helps. Once you get those violations, how do we remediate it? How do you fix that? Because what we think and what we have seen in the community is we talk about policy violations and making sure that we see those violations and stuff, but the goal is to fix the violations and have a cleaner cluster. So what Nirmata does is it not only shows you these violations, but it also remediate you. And we all know that developers who have access to the namespace and who are working on their development app do not have a knowledge of Kubernetes. They do not know Kubernetes. They don't need to know Kubernetes. It's a platform engineer's job. So how do you work with them to get a remediated YAML? You cannot, they won't have the skills to have a right security context with an indentation and all those remediated YAML. So that's where you let them use Nirmata, where they come in here, they see that, okay, so that's what it is crying about, where my remediated YAML is this. They download it and they just replace it. And they don't need to learn anything. There's no friction, no pinging them, no back and forth, nothing. So that's where Nirmata helps with the remediation. And this is where you can see it in the policy report. Again, something that I want to just quickly go back and walk you through. So you go in the policy reports, you see all the policies with categories, cluster, namespaces, click on your namespace, and you can go into resources and you click on the resource and click on the remediation, and you'll see the remediation coming up. It also tells you what it is remediating against and what are the violations and stuff. So something that just to know that where this is coming from and what it is doing. Now, I'll take a pause and probably we'll go with the exception, and we have other things that we have in here. For example, the NCTL pipeline scan. So I'm going to just go in the pipeline scan piece. And over here, if you look at the pipeline scan, what you can do is you can do the same scanning in your pipeline as well, where I do have the login command, which Patrick already walked you through. And then you can do a git clone of this demo repository and go to the demo repository and probably just do an NCTL scan publish. And what NCTL will do is it will automatically just do a scan of all your pipeline resources, all your repository, and push it in Nirmata. So you can have this in your CI/CD pipeline, in your Jenkins. We also have some examples in terms of how it can help in your GitHub action. So you can see and you can use this workflow. But the intent is that you have the violations not only coming from your cluster namespace, but also from your repository. So once you do the scan, you'll see all those things from your repository, from your cluster, and you can click in here and see like which namespace, which repo it is coming from, what exactly the branch is, and what's happening in your CI/CD pipeline. So you're entirely shifting left, and you're taking those feedback earlier, because developers do not like to be educated about violations once it is deployed. Rather, you want to educate them on day one when they're building their application. It's easy to just fix that rather than once it is deployed and then you're just going through that cycle. So that's about the repo scan. And to the benefit of time, I'm going to just walk you through the one more workflow, which is if you click in here, you would see the workflows which we did, which was we did the remediation, which was here, and we have one more, which is exception. So in Nirmata, what you can do is developers can also request for a policy exception. And why do you want to request for a policy exception is, let's be really realistic about this, right? If we understand that we want to secure it and stuff, but there is a reality to what we want and ideally what we would like to have. And the reality is that some applications cannot just get secured. It's because of the nature of the application. They require root access. There are some logical operations happening in the application which require those access. And that's why you cannot just remediate them and you cannot just turn off the root access. So for those applications, a developer can request an exception saying, I need this, and it can select like what namespace or what cluster they need exceptions for, and they can select the violations and they can request for an exception, and an admin can actually accept that exception saying that, okay, this is granted. And you see that record in there. So you see that exception record and what was deployed, what was not in your policy exception. That way, for example, if you're requesting one, you can see all the policy exceptions in your policy exception tab. And the reason for that is that you have all those recorded. So tomorrow, if you're like, who provided this exception and where this came from, you have all those audit, which you have to provide it to your security team. So you can schedule these reports, you can schedule these audits, you can schedule policy violations, remediation reports to your developers, so they don't have to come and log in here. Every morning when they log in, they see a report saying, oh, there are violations. And they see a report, they're saying that, oh, this is how you remediate it. You're making their life easier, their job easier, they're happy, you're happy, everyone is happy. So, so yeah, I think that's that. I think I was rushing a little bit, but I would say that we got everything in here nicely documented. Go to the workshop. Patrick is giving us the lab for 3 days. Let's use that. We have free trial for 15 days. And if you need any questions, given that I was kind of rushing in all these workflows for you, if you feel like, oh, Dollars, we didn't get it, go in here, click on the support tab and just chat with us and we'll be happy to help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to say one thing. I love the fact that, because it's one thing to know that, your pods or like your cluster is not up to par, right? But,
Yeah.
I think of it as like a, speedometer, right? So what speed you're going. You get the alert and saying, hey, you're going above the speed limit, but that does not slow you down, all right? So now you can have those guardrails where you can leverage as far as tools like that to where, hey, this is how you fix it. So we're gonna put the brakes in for you. We're gonna tell you exactly how to remediate this because just telling a developer that they're not secure is not a way of buying in. So they're just going to probably not necessarily ignore it, but it's not going to be if you're not going to tell me how to do it. And it's always good to explain how to do something, and tell them, as far as how to fix it. So it's really cool that you guys have that integrated and you can pretty much just create the policies and, add the run as non-root, type of capabilities in there. And I know I've worked with so many different clusters and especially coming into a cluster that's already spun up and having all those in production. I guess what's your suggestion, Dallas, as far as we have a cluster already. We know it's bad. We're just, we're bringing in, and orphaning as far as like clusters that are like, bad. And we're just coming into as far as position now. And now we have to clean this all up. What's the best take as a platform engineer to, obviously like, what's the game plan as far as your suggestion in implementing this the right way on a cluster that's in production? We can't bring it down and we bring it back up. What's your suggestion as far as getting to that point of okay, we're good?
Yeah, so I think the best way to go on that one is have your policies in audit mode, given that it's a production cluster and you don't want to just blow off your production cluster. You want to secure it, but don't bring the workloads down. That's important. So doing it in audit mode. And then, as I said, in your policies, have the namespace, or in Nirmata, there are features coming out where you can suppress the namespaces as well. Because I've seen like, if a user has a cluster and if you deploy the policies and they see like 3,000 violations, they're like, oh my God, I don't,
Yeah.
right? They're nervous because they're like, oh my God, that's too much. So you don't get the fatigue of these violations. So start with applications that are critical. Do not think, because this cluster was critical for a lot of time, for quite a lot, right? So you can take a week or 2 weeks for other applications, but start with the critical applications that have the highest business impact,
Mhm.
have those violations, onboard your developers so that you both can work together for a secure environments, because security is everybody's job nowadays. It's not just falls under platform or security team. So give all the access, all the enablement a developer need to do their job, like remediation and stuff, and start building from one application and then expand. If you start in your cluster, you're like, oh my God, that's going to be too much. And I'm going to shut down my laptop and just head out.
Right,
That
right, right.
would be the best. And probably deploying it in the pipeline and stuff, start using some best practices and reflect on what we can do to not come into the situation and do better next time. So start deploying this in the pipeline. Use NCTL to scan your clusters. In fact, if you go to the documentation, you can scan your clusters using offline scanning. So if you don't want to use, like even today, if people are like, I don't want to onboard it in Nirmata, I want to see, but how is my cluster's posture? Use NCTL, do an offline scanning of your cluster. It tells you an entire report like your blood report, where you are, what's missing,
Nice.
what's
Nice.
critical, and that's helpful as well.
Great, great. I think that's a great response, and at least some actionable things that, as far as, the platform developers and everyone who's pretty much, here still, can leverage and know as far as like what's the next step. So, I think that's fantastic. And I know we kind of like sped through, I wouldn't say sped through because I think you did a really good job at explaining everything.
Trying to rush though, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just guys, also I just want to mention, there is a survey that we have, and we do want to make sure that you guys are letting us know as far as like how we can make these workshops better. What did you like about it? How amazing Dallas is done, as far as in this presentation. And so we can keep these going and we can provide value into these workshops, because we don't want it just to be a webinar where we're just talking, but we want you to actually be hands-on experimenting with these things. And that's why we want to invest in providing you the AWS accounts that not only just for one day, but for 3 days you can experiment with this. And even outside of the 3 days that we provide you access to, you can still have the 15-day free trial that Nirmata's been gracious to give. So you can definitely check out your posture, find that action plan, and empower not only your developers, your platform team, and as overall everyone involved in this. Because again, it's a one team thing. Security is not on the the heels of one person or one entity. It takes the total group and team to, and essentially it takes the entire enterprise, the company to buy into this. That yeah, there's some things that we have messed up, but hey, let's find out how we can all collectively do our part to ensure that we're not on the news about some major breach over some simple pod or some simple application that may not even be as far as like something that we have a lot of eyes on. But this way we have our eyes on it, on a dashboard, and some nice ways to remediate it with that automation. So I know I said a lot there, but yeah, do you guys have any questions as far as in the chat as well? Just please let us know. Feel free to ask away, and we'll be more than happy to answer as best we could.
Yeah, like Patrick said, if you haven't had the opportunity to ask any questions, like put it in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll get to you as soon as we can. We have plenty of time to answer some questions. So I'll give y'all like another minute to do that. I do have a question, and Dallas, this might be more geared for you. What are some of the use cases that, these policies can help with?
Yeah. So in fact, we do have like something called as custom policies that I wanted to walk you through, but I thought like it's going to be too much for like a 35 minutes workshop, but you can check out in the documentation workshop, and I've added some custom policies in there. So some of the use case, and sky's the limit in here, guys. It's, given that it is flexible, you have all, for example, let me ask you, what are the use cases for a Python developer to create a logic? You would say endless. You can do all the logical you need. You have, the language does have, it's mature enough, it has all the operators, functions, everything, and then you create your own use cases. So I can name a few, but these are not the limit. It's just you can use the operators and you can use the logic in thing, and you can use your own custom use cases. Going back to the questions, so one, we have 4 type of policies. So you have a validate policy, that means you can validate anything. You can validate a security context. You can validate a label. In your deployment YAML, you can validate any line, any character, any YAML format. So that's one. Second is we do have mutate policy. That means you can mutate or patch a label. So any pod coming with ABC, you can patch it saying change ABC to XYZ. So you can change, update images. You can update name. You can update whatever your syntax or whatever your naming conventions would be. So that is another. Third is you can generate resources. For example, if a namespace get created, create quotas, create request and limit, create XYZ. So you can generate and have a lot of automation done using policies. You can verify an image using supply chain. So you can sign an image and verify that attestation and have a supply chain methodology, which is a securities good approach in your policies as well. Fourth is you can use cleanup policies. So you can have a policy with a cleanup logic there saying that you create a namespace, and this namespace should be deleted after 2 days. So you can have a TTL logic there saying that after 2 days, this namespace would be deleted. So anytime when a developer requests for a namespace or a resource, you can define that and it will help you in cost optimization. So we have all those things that will help you to enable it. And we have all those logic that will help you to design that logic and create endless use cases, whether it is automation, generation, mutation, verify image, or it is cleanup.
Wow.
That's awesome. I appreciate you answering that and making it clear for us.
Yeah.
I think another question is, what is the best way to organize policies, especially for someone starting out?
Yeah, so the best way to organize policy is, I would say, we usually recommend one rule for one policy. But if you have like rules which do the same kind of a thing, for example, if you have like rules which are like validate, disallow, and then validate this as well, you can map the rules together. But it is always recommended that you have one policy, one rule, because as you start scaling up, then you have 60 policies and you have 60 rules, and you don't have like one policy having 5 rules, and then it becomes a difficult logic as well. The rules are usually implemented sequentially, so something to keep in mind. Another thing is the mutation happens first, then validation. It's a Kubernetes concept. We cannot control that, but the mutation webhook invokes first, then validating webhook invokes. So keep in mind that there shouldn't be any conflicting rules. And for that, we also have something called as Policy Studio. So if you go in Nirmata on the left, if you click on Policy Hub, you'll see a Policy Studio. So we do have AI capabilities that are built in the platform that can help you to write a policy, that can help you to test the policy. As I said, we have covered like top 3 use cases in today's workshop, but the platform has a lot of these use cases. Explore that, and you will see the platform giving you recommendation of how to write a policy for you.
Awesome. And I think the last one is, how do you understand the impact of applying new policies?
I would say understanding the impact of applying policies is have policy as a code um, approach for these policies. So when it comes to policy as a code, what is just like infrastructure as a code, use all your software development or engineering methodology when you're creating a policy. So when you create a policy, you test it using Chainsaw. You use a CLI, you do a scan in your policy in your cluster. You can do an NCTL scan for your namespace and see all the violations before you even deploy that policy. Third is you deploy the policy using audit. So it really depends upon what kind of cluster it is. If it is a production cluster, I would be nervous to deploy an enforced policy. So you use an audit policy. Before even using an audit policy, use an NCTL, scan the namespace, and see the violations you're getting, which tells you a fair idea in terms of what it is. And then you can also pipe it to a file and just review that. So you know that what impact or what violations would be, change it to audit mode and see the reports, and then make it to enforce mode so that it's blocking things and you know the impact, rather just not being aware about the impact and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? So I would say that's the best practice. Have all these policies in Git, use all the PAC standards, policy as a code standard, where you're using Git, you're deploying policies, you're doing rollouts, you're testing these rollouts in a sandbox cluster before you deploy production. So all the things, all the approaches we use in software development lifecycle, you use the same in policy as a code. If you want the impact to be less, and if you want to know the impact, use NCTL, use audit mode to understand what the impact of those policies would be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dallas.
No worries.
If no one has any more questions, presenters, I will start with you, Patrick. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with our attendees for today?
Well, I just think that again, it's I know in the beginning I mentioned security is job zero at AWS, and there's like delegations and delineations of who's responsible for what. But in the end, it's just a bigger it's a bigger thing as far as just being everyone just involved in this. So the way Nirmata has this, where it's policy as code, just makes it so much easier on the platform teams to to tackle this daunting task of, ensuring security while still empowering your developers to build quickly and, removing a lot of those guardrails, so they can build and have that, a good way to, like send those reports to the security team so they can be abreast of as far as what's going on. So you have the auditing of, who did what and when. So this is a really good way to, and it's a hard thing, and I think, Nirmata makes it a lot easier to get started, start implementing, see where you're at, what is your current state, and what's the desired state, and what's like realistic as far as, an actual action plan and getting to that state of Wonderland, right? So I think that's really good. Continue to, build and innovate. And also one other thing I would like you all to do with the 3 days that you guys have access to the environments, please take a look at our EKS workshop, and that workshop, you can pretty much run the same things here, and leverage it, take advantage of it if you're wanting to learn more about something like carpenter, maybe, because this would be a really good way to enforce those policies and, leveraging carpenter with Nirmata. So there's different things that you can like practice and study if you want to understand like load balancers or, different strategies that you may have been thinking about, and you want to go and give it a test and not necessarily impact your cluster, go on the EKS workshops website, and I'll post a link in the chat now so you can access that. But yeah, definitely take advantage of everything here. And yeah, this is your time to experiment, and not necessarily have, the security team on your back per se. So, but also still be mindful that these are actual accounts that we're incurring charges. So please don't spin up any crazy size instances as you experiment. But with that, just take your time and enjoy it. So again, and one other thing, do the survey, please. I know it wouldn't be an event without us asking for a survey, right? But again, this is super important for us to continuously build and develop and create content that's worth your while and worth the impact. So we appreciate your time here, and let me provide that link, and I'll pass it over to Dallas if she has anything else to add to that.
Yeah, Dallas, any last thoughts for us?
No, I think, Patrick, you said, and you said it all right. So yeah, use whatever you got, use the best of it. The trial account workshop is still there. Reach out to us if you have any questions, refer the workshop documentation, and let us know if you have any feedbacks. I'll be happy to get your thoughts in terms of what do you think about the platform, what do you think you like, what do you think you don't like. All that are good feedback. So yeah, that's all.
Awesome.
And this is going to be recording, right? So they'll be receiving this in the email within a couple of days, right?
Correct. I will be sending this recording out as well as any useful information links to help you out. So that being said, I want to thank you for joining today's session. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. A special thanks goes out to our wonderful panelists and presenters. So thank you, Dallas and Patrick. We appreciate you taking the time. And thank you for all of the wonderful insights and knowledge. Once again, like we said, this session will be sent out shortly after, if not first thing tomorrow. So be on the lookout, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.